On a quiet, gray afternoon in St. John's Wood, Paul McCartney sits at a piano. At 83, he no longer moves with the frenetic energy of a young Beatle, yet each note carries decades of experience and memory. Time has slowed his fingers, but not his ability to evoke emotion. In the pauses between melodies, one can almost sense the weight of his past, childhood in Liverpool, friendships formed and lost, the deaths of loved ones, and the evolution of music itself. His life, both public and private, reflects the intersection of fame and memory, achievement and loss. Listening to him play is a meditation on the endurance of creativity, the poignancy of nostalgia, and the strange way music can preserve moments in time. Childhood in Liverpool, Paul McCartney's story begins in a modest Liverpool home after the war. The McCartney household was full of everyday noise, cups clinking, radios murmuring, siblings calling to one another, but it was music that shaped the household rhythm. His father, a cotton salesman, played jazz in the evenings, and his mother, Mary, provided stability and love while working long shifts as a nurse and midwife. Paul adored her, and her presence anchored his early life. Yet that stability was abruptly shattered when Mary died of breast cancer when Paul was only 14. The loss created a void that would shape his emotional landscape and musical sensibilities. The experience taught him that grief could exist quietly, sometimes too profound to express, and that music might be the only way to articulate feelings too complex for words. The first guitar and a turning point. After losing his mother, Paul's father bought him a trumpet, but the instrument didn't satisfy his musical instincts. Paul needed something he could sing along with, so he exchanged it for a guitar. This seemingly small decision would have monumental consequences. With his guitar, Paul began practicing obsessively, both at home and wherever he could find a moment. Liverpool's vibrant musical environment, saturated with American rock and roll, inspired him to experiment and create. The city was alive with sound, teenagers forming bands, skiffle groups performing in church halls, and records from Elvis Presley and Little Richard drifting through open windows. This early immersion in music gave Paul a foundation in rhythm, melody, and performance, and planted the seeds of creativity that would later flourish alongside John Lennon, George Harrison, and eventually Ringo Starr. Meeting John Lennon-Paul's path intersected with John Lennon on July 6, 1957, at a church fete in Liverpool. Lennon's band, the Quarrymen, was performing skiffle music when Paul asked to try a guitar. He played 20 songs flawlessly, immediately impressing Lennon with his skill and musical intuition. This meeting was a quiet, ordinary moment on the surface. Buses passed, people walked home, life continued. But it marked the beginning of a partnership that would redefine music forever. Lennon saw potential in Paul, recognizing not just talent, but a shared understanding of loss and a hunger to create. Within days, Paul was invited to join the Quarrymen, setting in motion the chain of events that would lead to the formation of the Beatles. That initial encounter illustrates how extraordinary collaborations often start in ordinary circumstances. The addition of George Harrison. While Paul and John were forming their creative bond, another young musician quietly made his mark. George Harrison, only 15 at the time, impressed Paul with his precision and confidence on the guitar. Initially hesitant because of George's youth, John eventually agreed to meet him after George demonstrated his skill on a bus ride. George's inclusion completed the trio that would soon become central to the Beatles' sound. Their collaboration, built on mutual respect and a shared drive for excellence, created an environment where each could challenge the others and push creative boundaries. This combination of friendship, mentorship, and friendly rivalry became a defining characteristic of their early work, and it helped set the stage for the cultural phenomenon that the Beatles would soon become. Early years and Hamburg. By 1960, the group had evolved into the Beatles, embarking on a series of grueling gigs in Hamburg, Germany. Long nights in clubs with demanding crowds honed their skills and forged a professional discipline. Playing for hours on end forced the band to develop stamina, precision, and the ability to improvise under pressure. Hamburg was transformative, exposing them to musical styles, stagecraft, and audiences that would shape their future. Returning to Liverpool in 1961, the band's sound was tighter, louder, and more confident, attracting growing attention at venues like the Cavern Club. These formative experiences taught Paul, John, George, and eventually Ringo the importance of discipline, collaboration, and the subtle art of engaging audiences, all of which became cornerstones of their success in the years to follow. Beatlemania and global fame. By 1963, the Beatles had ignited Beatlemania across Britain, with fans screaming at airports, concerts, and public appearances. The frenzy reached global proportions after their 1964 American debut on The Ed Sullivan Show, watched by over 70 million viewers. Paul, now only 21, navigated unprecedented attention, finding himself at the center of a cultural storm. Despite the chaos, he continued writing songs, balancing public appearances with private creativity. Fame provided both opportunity and isolation, as crowds often became louder than the music itself. Paul's ability to maintain focus and channel his emotions into songwriting allowed him to endure the pressures of stardom. The juxtaposition of personal loss, early experience in Liverpool, and sudden global recognition illustrates how resilience and passion fueled his creative output. Musical evolution and personal expression. Amid the whirlwind of fame, Paul's songwriting matured. Early Beatles songs were energetic and danceable, but by 1964 to 1965, he began exploring softer, more personal melodies. Songs like Yesterday emerged from dreams and introspection, reflecting his experiences with loss and nostalgia. George Martin's suggestion to record Yesterday solo, accompanied by a string quartet, highlighted Paul's evolving artistry and willingness to innovate. These compositions contrasted with the band's earlier sound, emphasizing emotion over energy. The recording of Yesterday and later songs like Let It Be demonstrates how Paul transformed personal grief into universal music. His ability to translate private emotion into widely resonant art exemplifies his mastery, connecting listeners to memory, longing, and the passage of time, loss, reflection, and legacy. Throughout his life, loss has profoundly influenced Paul McCartney. The deaths of his mother, bandmates, and wife Linda shaped his perspective, infusing his music with tenderness and reflection. At 83, he often pauses at the piano, allowing memories to surface through melody. He once remarked that aging brings the awareness of carrying others with you, those who have left, yet remain part of the story. Music becomes a repository for memory, each chord recalling moments from Liverpool streets to Hamburg clubs and worldwide stages. His legacy is not merely fame, but the way his art preserves collective and personal histories. Listeners, knowingly or not, participate in this narrative, connecting generations through songs that endure beyond their creators' lifetimes. The enduring power of music. Paul McCartney's journey illustrates how music stores time and memory. From early loss to global superstardom, his life exemplifies resilience, creativity, and the emotional depth possible in songwriting. The Beatles transformed popular culture, but Paul's true gift lies in his ability to translate private experience into universally accessible art. Each note and lyric carries layers of history, reflecting joy, grief, and human complexity. Whether in a small room in St. John's Wood or a sold-out stadium, his music continues to resonate, reminding listeners of life's fleeting moments and enduring connections. Paul's story is an ongoing testament to the power of music, memory, and the quiet moments that precede legend.